Hey there, ShotDeck family. My name is Patrick Cady. I'm standing in for the fabulous Larry. Thank you very much for having me. I'm here today with the fabulous Alice Brooks, ASC, who shot Wicked and Wicked for Good. And we have a wonderful chance to get to talk to her today about the movie and cinematographer to cinematographer about techniques involved in the film. I got to see it at a really wonderful theater on Saturday with my family. So I got the full experience, and I'm very, very happy to be asked to do this and to get to talk with you, Alice, about this great work.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I'm very excited to get to talk to you.
Yeah, me too. All right, I'm going to dive right in. So I did not realize until watching some other interviews with you that and I'd always assumed I knew you went from you were shooting both these movies at the same time. I did not realize like how completely at the same time that was. Do you
Yeah,
want to talk a little bit about how you and Jon even prep for the monstrosity of shooting both of these movies, and then how do you keep in touch with each other and the process and staying so wonderfully aware of the needs of the cast and the needs of the audience to stay connected to the material through all of the insane planning and massive studios? Like, how do you do it?
I don't think we actually understood when we first started making the movie, or when we first started prepping the movie, actually quite how big it was going to be. I've been working with Jon for 25 years and have known him since film school. And so each time we sort of take a step up or a step back in our
Some of these steps
careers,
seem very big.
we're together. And so I mean, not we haven't always been, we had different trajectories for a good part of our 20s, but recently we have. And so we've been able to do these sort of together. And because we're together and have known each other for so long, the bigness of things don't actually affect us, which is really nice.
Right.
So it still feels like we're back in film school making movies instead of, in the middle of massively huge sets in London. And but that being said, at some point things did begin to seep in. Just the idea of making two movies at once was the first thing, and then when we started to understand the scale of the sets, that became a whole new thing for us. And I think we started creating a visual roadmap. And I mean, Jon had his own prep process with his actors, but for me, it was getting as much time with Jon as I possibly could. And we had this 2 year pre-prep period where we just shared ideas, and we always break down a script in the exact same way. And we didn't even have a script at this point, but we had musical numbers that we knew. We knew we weren't cutting any musical numbers from the original, and we knew we were going to have two new songs. So we started talking just about intentions per move for each movie. So like some of the intentions we talked about for the first movie were things like dreaming and friendship and choice. And for the second movie, some of them were separation and seclusion and surrender and consequence. And so we started saying the first movie would be about choice and the second movie would be about the consequence of those choices. And as we started realizing this, we realized we actually were making two movies with two very distinct visual styles. I love the way Jon describes it, but he talks about the first movie as dreaming as a fairy tale. So the first movie is this fairy tale, and in that way, the light is very effervescent and has a glow to it, and most of it's daylight. We shot 90% of the first movie during the day, and the second movie, on the other hand, 90% of it is at night, and it's steeped in shadow and density, and has a different it has a just a totally different tone to it. So that was the very beginning of our prep process. And then we started to understand that we weren't actually just even making these movies back to back, or 1 week we'd be here, 1 week we'd be there, but some days we would be shooting in the morning for movie one, and in the afternoon we'd be switching to movie two on the same set. And really and our schedule was much bigger when we started, and then they started cutting days, as always needs to happen when you need to fit inside a budget.
Good Lord. I mean, that's crazy. So the second film has this overriding sense of night, even though the opening number is in the daylight and feels very much like a continuation of some of those great big day exteriors from the first film. did you shoot that really close to shooting some of the other day exterior stuff, or were you kind of always bouncing day to night the whole time?
We had 5 backlot sets and several locations, and all of that would have been day work. So the opening number, it introduces us in day, but it also shows the 2 different lives of Glinda and Elphaba. So the opening number shows, and it begins to establish our camera language between the 2 worlds. So for Glinda, we're in the middle of Emerald City, in this bright, beautiful, sunny Emerald City, and she is the center of the world. We center punch her, we frame her inside circles and bubbles, and we do these huge crane moves towards her, whereas Elphaba is in her nest. So the scenes that aren't necessarily night for the first movie are we shoot sort of in the underbelly, or the secret places no one knows exist in Oz,
Right.
and or where Elphaba is in hiding. And so we find her in her nest. We called her nest. It was scripted as the grotto in the script, and then we called it her lair for a little bit. And then as we started sharing ideas, Nathan Crowley, Jon, and I, during this pre-prep process, also started sharing ideas. And I found this picture that started to lead us towards the nest, and it was of my husband's parents' vacation, and they were in this sort of space with all sort of a tangle of space of wood.
Oh,
And I think
cool.
it's they travel all over the world, and so I showed this picture, and then that started leading us towards nests,
Right.
and it slowly developed, because originally I think it was scripted as like some cave, and it became this nest, and within this nest there's very little openings for light, and so we were able to find her in shadow, and we treat her in a lot of handheld work and extreme close-ups versus Glinda, and we don't send her puncher, she's to the sides of frame and in profile a lot, and we get closer to her than we've ever gotten to her before, and definitely not as close we don't get as close to Glinda until later in this film.
Yeah, I mean, what really strikes me is this transition to this close-up of her hand that's a ShotDeck here, and I love that that's an included still, because they're so together. They're always together, it seems, in the frames in the first movie, and then it's the push and pull of them in the same space, and then in this film they're in completely different places. And there is something about, I do feel that connection to Elphaba, and I feel like Glinda is getting, it's a prison of your wishes almost, right? Is kind of the maybe the thought behind it, is she got everything she wanted, and it's nothing that makes her any better.
It's actually the line in all of the songs that made me want to do this movie more than anything, and I'm sure I'm going to botch it, but she sings in Thank Goodness, which is the second number in the second movie, getting your dreams is strange, but it seems a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
There's kind of a sort of cost. A couple of things get lost. That was really the reason. I mean, I wanted to do this movie for many reasons, but that lyric to me was the one that kept sort of driving me forward as we made this film.
Well, now, and this is what makes the film work. And what's interesting is I saw it with my family. Jill and Sammy and I went all and saw it on Saturday, the opening weekend, and a Dolby theater, so that we could see it in the real, in the right color and everything. And you can feel those lines go through an audience, which is really fun, to be in a big room with a lot of people and have them latch onto them too. It's really exciting to know that that's working. I got to imagine.
I think, and I've told this story before, but a few weeks ago, I was at a screening and a Q&A afterwards, and this little boy kept raising his hand, and no one called on him. And of course, he's 4 or 5, no one would bring him a microphone. And then at the end, I saw him walk out, and I knelt down by him, and I said to him, did you have a question? And he was so shy, and he couldn't look me in the eye, and he was holding his little Elphaba doll, and he said, "Thank you for making Elphaba. I'm Elphaba too." And it's just these. I remember when I went to see Empire Strikes Back. It was the re-release, I think, and I was so scared at times that I'd be under the folding chair, and then I'd hop up, and I know my parents just wanted to watch the movie, but it's my first time remembering seeing a film in the theater. And I remember the first movie I remember seeing ever was The Natural, and that was at home with my dad. But this was the first movie I remember seeing, and just being able to go, I want to be Princess Leia when I grow up. And so I love that. I love that I got to be part of a movie where little kids want to be Elphaba or Glinda or
I mean,
Fiora,
come on, it's
whatever it is.
amazing.
Yeah,
It's so
it's
good.
really so good.
Um, yeah, my first memory of a movie was Peter Pan and looking up to my dad
Um,
when the boat's going across the moon at the end, and he was just like, I was like, oh, my dad is a kid now too. There's something about that that I thought was so amazing. And then the first movie that made me want to be like, oh my gosh, was the first Star Wars, because I grew up in the middle of nowhere. And so the sense of ever having a call to adventure seemed impossible. And there's, Luke Skywalker on the screen and he's stuck on a farm in the middle of nowhere. I'm like,
that's
I'm in the snow, he's in the desert, but I get it. Like, I understand.
yeah,
Luckily my parents didn't have to be, burned by stormtroopers.
that's good.
Um Now, are there, in that initial prep, like, I love that you're bringing a reference that isn't even another film, but really personal to you. And it does seem like that's the thing you and Jon are so smart about, is regardless of the size of the number, you're really making every effort for us to connect to the performances. Um, and it's not in any order. One thing I wrote down in my notes for today is the idea that the camera is story, that scale demands massive lighting and sets, but how to stay connected with the camera to the story. Does that make you think of any scenes in particular? There's so many. I can point a couple out, but I don't know if one comes to mind for you.
I don't know where it came from for me. Well, I guess I do. I grew up a child actor, and so I always am thinking about the camera as just being another actor on the set, and that actors get to use their voice and their eyes and their being to create a story, and I get to use lenses and lighting and color and camera movement. And so as long as I am remembering what the intention of the scene is, that's where everything comes from. So no matter what scale the set is, it doesn't really matter, and or how little the set is, or whatever it may be. Or if we are doing flying and we're on a blue screen, that's equally as important to me. Even though I know there will be a CG world around where being in and close and making sure the actor, the camera is just part of the moment with the actor, so that they can fully be present to the role they're creating. And on pre-lights on the weekends, I walk around with the script, and I start to walk around the set and start to feel what it feels like to be Elphaba or Glinda in the space. And I pick up things and touch things, and I don't know exactly what the blocking will be necessarily. Even if we've blocked it on the set before, it always changes on the day with Jon.
Sure.
And so I just start, but I feel the light on my face, and I feel, what does that feel like? And I've got a camera for pre-light, and so I start to feel what the proximity, and is the camera intrusive to the space too. And then when Jon always gets to set about an hour before call, and I beat him there, and I'm in the space, is hiding in a dark corner when he arrives. And he knows I'm there, but we just never even speak to each other for the
Mm.
first hour. And I watch him do the same thing, and probably I learned starting to pick up things and walk around the space from him, from and so now I'm watching him do it as Glinda or Elphaba, or how he sweeps the cape, and now I'm starting to get insight into where his headspace is for this day, where we're actually going to put it on film. And then I start to walk the space around the perimeter and start to see, okay, if this is what he's going to do, or work with the actors, then maybe this is my way in. And so I often just feel like my job is just observing and watching and being curious, and then I go approach scenes from that perspective.
I mean, that's wise. That's good wisdom to pass on to anyone who's a filmmaker. I think I come from I started as an electrician and lighting, and so I still go stand where they're going to be, and think about that same thing, like, oh, like that I could make them look better with a giant rag 2 feet away from them, but then they're never going to know where they are or feel where they're what they're doing, or so I'm not gonna. I got to figure out another way to do it. So that's another question I had for you is, in these scenes, especially so many of them are, it's impossible to say the ones that are more grounded in the human nature of them, because that's the trick that you've pulled off with the film, is that they're all grounded in these, and their musical numbers, and the joy of the using their live voices on the set is you can really tell their emotion is inside the songs. um how do you make them look great but stay out of the way at the same time? What are things you've been learning in this scaling up of the last decade?
I mean, I think part of it was we knew we wanted to approach this as a live experience as well, and so like a live stage show. And so the live singing was the first aspect of it, and then the
Right.
second aspect of it was that we did live lighting cues. So none of from take to take, none of our cues are exactly the same.
Oh, how
we
great.
we didn't tie into time code except for actually in Wonderful when we're in the rainbow room, but otherwise we didn't tie into time code. We were able to completely pull everything off of the characters and the emotion. And so the gaffer and the dimmer board op, it would be John with his monitors with the script supervisor, and then me with my two monitors, and the gaffer and the gaffer and the dimmer board op right next to me, and everything would be live. Even dialogue scenes, we would do subtle lighting cues. There are thousands and thousands of live lighting cues within this movie that no one ever sees, but I know you can feel them. And I know they're part of the emotional storytelling of this movie. And so in Wonderful, I mean, this is all a long shot that we're looking at right now, where Glinda disappears and she runs through a trap door and around the back of the stage and pops out. And so through this, we had to work out all the timing and and I think this is one of the shots we probably did more than any other ones, just because, they kept throwing the broom and it would
There's
drop.
a lot happening, and
It,
and I'm sure everyone thinks that the disappearing is like a fully CG thing, but
no,
it might be cleaned up, but she's really disappearing.
she's
Like,
really
yeah.
disappearing. And that, I mean, 50 years ago, there was no CG. And so this is the way you would have done it. And so people just assume, oh, they just did it with CG. But no, and that's not to take away from our amazing visual effects team who's done an
Right.
incredible job on this film. But for the most part, like there's a oneer through mirrors, and we did that all practically too. And
Wait,
so
girl, bubble is,
I mean, it's stitched together. It's 7 shots stitched together,
yeah,
five.
we're going to talk about that next,
We'll
because
talk about that
I'm
later.
so
But
curious.
but we started. I mean, I think John started like wanting to always do practical kind of effects when he was 10 and built his own haunted house. And and so all of these things that he asked for were trying to be practical. And this broomstick ride they're about to get on too is a ride inside this actual space. And John had said for a year, I wanted to feel like the Peter Pan ride at Disneyland. And he kept saying Peter Pan ride, Peter Pan ride. No one understood. He actually wanted a ride for them to get on. And so the entire set was built, and with 3 weeks before we were supposed to start shooting it, we only had Jeff Goldblum for 4 weeks total out of our 155-day shooting schedule. So he's like, no, I want a ride. I want them to get on a track at the top of because it's a 2-layer set, at the top of the steps, and then ride down to the wizard for this piece of music. So the ride has to last this long. And then, and we'll do the lighting. It needs to shift from green, lights on to pink to green, and then back to normal lighting. And so special effects is like, okay, great. And they figured out how to build a track and bring it in here. And the walls are constructed. We can't take them out. Like this is taking up an entire sound stage from floor to ceiling, 45-foot tall walls. And these two sets are connected, the wizard's head room and the control room in the back. And then he said, and so that was great. Special effects figured it out. Now I need to be able to pull them down. I need a crane to get in there to bring them down. And so, and a 45-foot wouldn't fit in there. So we ended up with the 23-foot crane with track. And then on top of it, now I've got these lighting effects, which were not rigged for, because in that space, we only had lit by color. So we had 300-watt light bulbs that we had built practicals into the set. I worked with Nathan to figure out what practicals, and then the gaffer found these 300-watt light bulbs that you can only get here in North Hollywood, but we got them. And then so we're only by color. So now we need to light it for pink and green. So the gaffer David Smith had developed these lights, I think with Mandy Walker, and he calls them candy lights. And he's also got Ruby, and they're for, like, instead of Mandy, they're Candy, and Ruby is for her daughter. So so we used them, and they're full RGB, and we had picked our green and pink colors during prep months before. So and they're very lightweight, and so he was able to just rig them with rope and at the right angles. And so that's how we did the pink and the green. But then but then there was 2 weeks when they go into this next room, into the throne room, where it's all concentric circles that lead up. So the circles are all real, that go all the way up to the top. And when Nathan built them, there was no space between them. And so we had to get Nathan to make this circle shrink more and give a 10-inch gap. So every row I could light all the way up to the very top. And in the very top of the circle, we had a softbox, a soft circle, I should say. And then
This shows the Lenny Kravitz "Go My Way" video. Who's boss? I have to say, Alice.
but this took, I mean, this is the longest programming anything took. So this was 2 weeks. Where we lost our dimmer board op and had a different dimmer board op come in because he was in this space
Oh,
while we
because
were
he's
shooting.
prepping this.
Yes. So this was, he'd work on it all day. We'd come in at wrap, and the choreography team would be in there rehearsing as well. And so we'd be able, every day at wrap for 2 weeks, we'd go in and go, okay, and understand what was happening as we were going. We had 17 sound stages, but within those 17 sound stages, we had 73 iterations of sets. And so we were constantly, as soon as the editor was always getting the notice, strike notice, like literally the day we wrapped, he's like, no, I need to make sure I don't need any other pieces before you strike the set. But there was no time for that. They had to strike the set before he could get through all the dailies and do a rough cut.
And so I love this number for all the things you just talked about, but then there's a couple geeky things I want to ask you. And one is the levels you're shooting at, because you've got these light bulbs that are in frame where I can see the filaments dimmed down enough to see the filaments in these other boxes. So are you you're a big sensor camera, right?
Yep, we shot at 1280.
Yeah.
And then we dimmed those way down. And most of the movie shot at a 2.8. Everything inside is shot at a 2.8. And then outside, we'd ride the iris because of clouds.
Right.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of this whole scene is this idea that they can be reunited, and the transition from them holding hands, which, you hope that they can do this at the end of the movie, and, will they or won't they be able to, and then that transition. But then this, after they go through the ride, before they go into the giant room, the way that transition is shot is so great, because it goes from, you're with them in all this, but you do sense this grandeur of scale, right? They're on this big ride, and then suddenly you're just with some kids running through some curtains.
We had that space back under the stairs. We had that space, and And that was something also John kept layering in. He's like, no, I want stuff for them to run. We had the sort of cloth fabric to be curtain things.
Hmm.
But he wanted layers underneath the stairs because he wanted it to feel, he wanted that, Alice in Wonderland feel where suddenly you go through this rabbit hole and I mean, Elphaba's being mesmerized and she wants her to have that friendship back. And John and I started talking about hands. It was one of the very first themes we while we talk about emotions, we also talk about percolating images.
Oh, that's a great term.
So I have this massive list of images that were percolating and not and or marinating, whatever, but we called them percolating in our spreadsheet. And one of them was hands, and the idea of hands being a recurring theme throughout. And this was a moment that it makes this was a moment while we were filming where it makes my relationship with John, it's one of those, just like I love him so much. And so we were shooting it, and we weren't going down to the hands. And then I'm looking and I'm like, okay, it's fine. They're like, we're just on the back of them. They run up the stairs, and then I know we're going to cut to the brooms going together. But I kept thinking, oh, the thing we're missing is the shots that we are doing in the first film, and those hand shots in the first film, it was all about connection. And so I run up, and John's like, that was a perfect take, let's move on. And I run up to John, I'm like, no, it wasn't the perfect take. I'm like, we need to see them hold hands. They're doing either they were doing it or maybe they weren't even doing it. And he's like, we need to see this moment. And he's like, Alice, that was a great take. And I said, John, just trust me, just do the hands. And then they had done a rough cut in this movie, but they cut both movies just to show to the studio at 15 weeks after we wrapped. But they then didn't look at this movie, Wicked for Good, for another year or after that. And so, or more. But in every single trailer for the first movie, they used this hand shot from the second movie. And I kept saying, John, I'm like, John, aren't you glad we got this shot? And I didn't even know if it was going to make it into the second movie. But he's like, I know you were right. But it's always working with John and working with your friends is amazing, because and not because it's easy, but because it's actually uncomfortable, because we demand more of each other, we expect more of each other. We know when we know when we are just phoning it in, or when we're actually there and present and fully immersed in a project. And so we can't take any shortcuts with each other. And so when one of us says something to each other, the other one listens, because we don't just use words to use words. We say things when it's really important. And so when I said that to him, we did one more take, we got the hands, and that's what's in the movie.
It's amazing. Well, I think that is a good way to talk about for good.
Yeah.
Because again, we're so emotionally connected. The lighting is the perfect amount of fill and subtlety to see what's happening on their faces, but still feel like we're in a place with real fire and what that's doing on their skin, and them being in a space together. I've heard you talk about this, but I don't know if everyone who's watching this has. This was originally going to be shot one way and then was shot a different way, right?
So this sequence, well, first, this ended up being a cover set. So we were supposed to be shooting outside in Munchkinland for the opening number of the first movie, and it was pouring rain, and the only stage that was ready for us to go into was this stage. And so
Good
suddenly
Lord.
we're thrown into the very end of the second movie, and we there's a whole color story throughout these movies where I used every color of the rainbow to light different scenes. And so for as we just talked about Wonderful, the rainbow represented possibility, all the endless possibilities for Elphaba as she gets to make the choice whether to join the wizard and Glinda or to keep fighting for what she knows is true. And in For Good, blue is the color of Elphaba and Glinda's love, and we see it first in the Ozdas ballroom, and then we see it here, and the Ozdas ballroom's in the first movie, and orange is the color of Elphaba's transformation, and we first see it in For Good when she lights the flames. So the orange flame is the color of Elphaba's transformation, and we used real flame light here. These are flames, torches around, and we have wind, and so the wind is blowing the flames, and you can see the flicker on the face as they blow. So because this was a cover set, all the torches weren't even set up and ready to, like, hadn't been placed.
Right.
And it was a Thursday and Friday, so they make the call on Wednesday that we're not going back to Munchkin Land. And so Jon goes and talks to the actors. I talk to the AD and say, I need a couple of hours in the morning. That we did a pre-light the weekend before on this set, but we hadn't actually completed everything. And so we all agree, it's going to be a little bit of a rough start in the morning for everyone. Usually we were ready a half an hour after call, and this was going to be a little later. And we had to place the torches exactly where I needed them for the light. And then we shot all day Thursday, all day Friday. The first day was just the dialogue scene at the beginning, and then the second day was the singing. And then we get to this moment here, and we kept doing these crane moves. I had 2 cranes, and we're on a platform. The set's built up 12 feet high, and so we're doing these moves, and they're just not working. I don't feel anything, and Jon doesn't feel anything, even though the actors are doing amazing things. And so this was another moment where Jon and I can just be completely honest with each other. And we went and we started talking, and we went back to, okay, what is the heart of the movie? What are the original ideas? And if this is a love story, if this is The English Patient or any great, wonderful, beautiful love story. I don't know. I said The English Patient, except I love that movie.
It's a pretty amazing movie. I think it's a good one.
If we're at this moment where it's a final goodbye, and what are the things that we've done so far that create connection between these 2 women? And one of them was this 360-degree shot that we do in the Ozdas ballroom and in Defying Gravity. And in Defying Gravity, it's almost identical to the shot where they're standing in a window in Defying Gravity, and we circle around them once. Here, we ended up circling around them twice. But it's 5:00 on a Friday, and we had to wrap. In London, you do 10-hour days, and that's that. And then everyone goes home. And so it's time to go home. And so Jon, but we realize that is part of our visual motif. There are other couple ones where they look directly in the camera at each other, the hand holding, and then a use of split screen as well. And so we decide we're going to do this 360 the next day, or on Monday. And so I go and talk we can't do it because there's no place for the Steadicam to go, for 2 reasons. The Steadicam can't go around because they're standing on the edge of the set, and then there's a 12-foot drop. So we need a platform built so that Karsten Jakobsen, our Steadicam operator, can move 360 degrees. And then I also don't have the lighting rigged around here to do a 360-degree shot.
And the slow dissolves to have them in good light in every position.
Yeah. So everyone went home on Saturday and Sunday. We work on another stage that we're going to go to after this stage, and then we work on this 360-degree shot. And then Jon had seen in rehearsal the way they said goodbye to each other in the closet. And Jon said, well, if we're doing it this way, we're coming back for this. He's like, I want them to do this, and then that morning, I want them to go have their final goodbye in the closet as well. since they're going to be in this emotional place. And I want it to be a real in-camera split screen. I don't want to cheat it. I want them to be able to say goodbye at the same time to each other and not choose, okay, we're going to do Cynthia first and then Ariana. I
Right.
want it all to happen in camera. And so Nathan goes, well, it requires ripping down, or I had said, we need to rip down the wall then to get this. And then Nathan's like, well, if you rip down the wall, we can't shoot this direction again on the set. And John's like, that's fine. I want this moment. And you can see like that this, like, it's not a perfect split screen because the wall wasn't built.
Right.
It's not square. It's that imperfection that is humanity and real people making this movie.
Well, and making that decision, over the weekend or
Yeah.
on, did
Yeah.
he make that call Monday or Friday?
Friday, and
Yeah.
so we pulled it, and then we also moved the wall back behind Ariana just a little bit, so I had a
Um,
little bit more space to light,
yeah.
and so she's in the cool light on the right side, and Cynthia's in the warm light on the left side, and you can see the torchlight playing in her hair a little bit, and and it's static, and we just let it be what it is.
I mean, it's another massive moment in the movie, and when you're watching it with a bunch of people, you feel them all, you feel everyone get hit kind of in the gut by that amazing moment. So you talk about making this decision, and regardless of the scale of the movie, there's still there it could be easy for there to be pressure from all kinds of directions to, like, what, you just spent 2 days shooting this scene and you had two technocranes, like, why aren't we moving on? And I love that you and John have this relationship where you're going to go after that what's best for the film, which is the human element. How do you fold your crew into being the right crew for you and John? And have you established ways of working with increasingly larger and larger groups of people to have them come along and be part, like, realize they're being part of this type of decision making?
John leads in this wonderful way it's where he makes it very clear. He says early on, I think even on day one, that there's no room for any egos making this movie, and that we're all a family, and everyone can throw their ideas in, and he asks us all to dream bigger than we've ever dreamed before. And then and there is obviously there's massive pressure. This was a huge undertaking for Universal. I mean, I don't know any other studio who would do shoot two movies simultaneously without knowing what the box office of the first one is.
Right. I mean, that's the other part that's boggling to me, is like they just went for it. Like, okay, yeah, you're going to make these two movies.
But somehow they were convinced also that we it was really important to shoot it like an old Hollywood movie where you shot on massively huge sets,
Right.
and that we were a fantasy movie, but we're gonna have real practical, as much practical as we can in camera, and so we all walked down this yellow brick road, so to speak, together, and supported each other. But we didn't go over schedule. So sure, on this day we needed a couple of extra hours, but then we figure, on that long a schedule, then you can start to go, okay, well, how can we simplify this moment? Um, or I mean, there was even the little girl scene in this movie, the young Glinda scene, was removed when we shot, so we didn't actually shoot that. And then they cut the movie together, and it was always in the original script, but because of budget, that was taken out. And then and then and then John's like, no, we actually do need this moment. And so we went back to London and shot 2 or 3 additional photography days, and that was the only
Oh my gosh,
new scene that we shot. Everything else was just teeny little pickups of single lines, really. So there's logistics, there's things to work out, there's politics involved, but then you go, okay, so how can what pieces need to move so that we can go back and do this for an extra couple of hours? And John strategically goes, okay, I don't, with the AD, he goes, I can do this in less time than you have planned, and so it's always a game, a puzzle piece.
Well, it's also that honesty between all the key players, especially you and John, so that when the production designer says, well, when we tear that wall out, it's not going to just like pop back in. And John's like, that's fine. Like, I don't, I'm okay not looking in that direction if it gets me this part, which is glue that holds the whole thing together. So, it's,
And then my team, like I had never even been in London before, let alone make a
this is
movie
what I
there.
wanted to ask about. Yeah. Is how do you form that team?
So, I mean, I called every single person in the ASC. Every single time I was at the ASC, I would call, or I would say, "Oh, I'm making a movie in London. Who do you suggest?" And
Right.
I still have a massive list of suggestions for each role on my phone. And obviously some people aren't available when you're shooting, and so it starts to whittle it down just that way. And then I started having interviews with people, and it's funny because Karsten, who ended up being our Steadicam operator, I had to interview him like 4 times because I just couldn't figure out if he was actually the right person for this movie. And the first time, and finally, it was, and I kept saying, no, 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 I want to keep meeting other people. And so I kept meeting other people. And then it kept coming back to Karsten. And then he was hired. And then I convinced the line producer in UPM that I needed him for 10 weeks of prep. And so, because I wanted him in dance rehearsal the
So
entire time.
smart.
And so finally, when everyone signed off on him coming for 10 weeks of prep, I had been there for several months at this point, but I started movie club with my team, and movie club was Wednesday evenings or Wednesday at 4. We'd get together and we'd watch a movie, and it was a movie that had nothing to do with Wicked necessarily. It was just like watch a movie and then talk about it and get to know each other on a purely artistic level. And I love to tease the gaffer because he said he thought it was the biggest waste of time when we started because he thought we had too much work to do. But in reality, yeah, you have so much work to do, but when you create a shorthand with people and everyone, you create a world where everyone has the same taste suddenly,
Yeah.
then later on becomes much easier. And one of those examples is with Karsten, when for Girl in the Bubble, we were John only wanted it to be me and him and Ariana and the choreographer and the AD at our rehearsal for the first couple of hours. And so it's a scene where we go in and out of mirrors. So John's like, I'm going to operate in, I'm going to do with my iPhone, I'm going to shoot the inside the mirror and you're going to shoot outside of the mirror, and we'll shoot it, and then I'll take the videos and cut it together. So, which is always our process.
Oh,
Then,
that's interesting.
and then Karsten came, and I'm like, oh, why don't you take my shot, which is outside the mirror? And so then he did his outside the mirror, and then we airdrop everything to John, and we can't figure out which one's Karsten's and which one is my shot. They're framed exactly the same way, and and so we had somewhere during prep we had aligned our aesthetic values to each other, and then finally we looked at the timestamp and figured out, I had shot mine an hour before his. And so, and but it really is about, for me, it's it's just human beings, and how and you're going to make something together, and it's artists, and how do as I always treat every person on my team as an artist, not a technician, and that's what I invite them to come to set with.
As soon as that's the reality and not just talk, because you're sharing movie club and you're doing all these, now when you talk to each other, it doesn't always have to be technical. You can talk about the emotion you're trying to get across, and you're inviting them to be those artists with you. And now you've got that team forever. Like that's a group you want to keep working with.
Yep.
That's really wonderful. I just finished a thing last week and I started bringing in relics. I would bring in different old things from like the 30s, like that from that case of stuff I showed you the other
Yeah,
day.
I love their case.
Yeah, and so I would just bring a different thing in, and everyone would be like, "Oh, look at the way the case!" Like
Yeah.
everyone would start geeking out, and so now there's this extra layer on top of the that it's not like you start remembering. I think it's helpful because you start remembering what got you excited about being on a set together, and
Yeah.
that's really important when you're trying to figure out
Otherwise,
some
it's
big
just
problem.
a job, right? And
Right,
if it's just a
and then the
job,
hours are too dumb for it to be just a
it's
job.
it is. And so I think, we all, I think everyone who is part, makes movies does it, each person for a different reason, but I think most of us want to be something, part of something that's bigger than ourselves.
Well, we all have those early memories of being influenced by something in the theater that made us really go wow, and we want to help make those moments. Um, which this sequence, when I watched, I was like, all right, contact, new gauntlet
Yes.
has been thrown down. So
Um, I mean, Contact was our biggest inspiration for this, and I remember watching Contact when I was whatever 15 years old, and I'd read the book first all summer, and then I watched the movie, and when Ellie goes, when the young Ellie goes and reaches for the medicine cabinet, and you realize it's all been, this whole shot has been in this mirror. It is true movie magic. And as we started talking about this scene, it's a new song it's not one of the original songs in the play, and John, this is a pivotal moment for Glinda where she actually has to face the person who she's become and the lies that she's been living, and look at herself, and John's like, but I can't just sustain her standing and
right,
singing into a mirror for 3.5 minutes. And so we started Googling the greatest movie mirror shots of all time. And then we started Googling, YouTube videos of all these great mirror shots that, 12-year-olds are doing that are very impressive. And we created this big catalog of mirror shots. And Contact, Peggy Sue Got Married and Contact, I think, were our top two. And
nice.
we so we did so we started to talk through, okay, if we on the set, the set wasn't built yet, but we had seen the design, and so we were like, okay, there's going to be two mirrors on either side of from there's a balcony that's it's a symmetrical room, so there's two mirrors on either side of these two staircases, and so we know those two mirrors exist. And then John's like, well, and I think there should be a mirror above her sunken living room. And then he's like, and the last place a mirror could be in this space would be in the closet, and we called that the Hall of Memories.
Nice. Well, that color to the first movie, and yeah,
So it starts with her closing the door, and it's just this very quiet, static shot, and then she walks towards the center of the room, and she sees herself in the mirror. So this is the first shot, and then we'll cut to her reflection, which is the second shot, and then we go, and then so this is just a paint out of our camera in the reflection.
hmm
And then the third shot becomes the beginning of a oneer. And so we're pulling back with her. And as we're pulling back, we start to arc toward the mirror. And as she's getting closer, we start to change the direction of the light as well. So these
yeah,
lights on either side. So when we designed this as a oneer, I started talking to Nathan about building practicals into the set because there were just all these table lamps places and no real.
oh yeah,
And he was really, you can see one table lamp in the back there.
yeah, yeah.
So he was really struggling with the idea that there should be lights on either side of the mirror. And I was just like, we're doing this oneer. I need
You got to
lights.
help me out.
And so finally he's like, we had just finished building the Ozdas ballroom set, which is made out of clear resin that I backlit with the blue
Hmm.
light. And so he's like, well, what if I create an architectural element here and then you can light it from inside? So we put LED tape in these, I think these were like 12-foot tall sort of resin pillars. And then this is where we start to cut to the second shot. So we don't use a double at all. So now when we're facing the mirror here, it's blue,
Hmm.
and we push into the mirror, and the shot in the mirror is our second shot. And for this shot in the mirror, we've because mirrors are all shooting into mirrors are all math. We needed to have the right. We had to double our distance
Exactly.
from her. So we needed the wall, which is 45 feet tall, where the mirror is, to hinge backwards, so we could put camera far enough away. And we're up 12 feet, so they have to build a platform so that we can have the right distance. And so now we start pushing back so that as she approaches, we're getting closer to the mirror. And then we push through, and it's all now still a single take. We don't go, we're still in one shot, and the wall hinges back as we come around and see the mirror again, which is here. And then she's walking towards this sort of sunken living room. She's walking down the steps. We're steady camming back with her.
And
And then
just to point out, like the 12-foot wall is not hyperbole. Like you can see how high it goes right in there. Like
yeah,
it's
those
still
sconces.
going.
Yeah. And now she's in the living room, and we start to come around her. And as we come around her, we start to point up, and then um, and then we start to push in as we are in a wide. Then we start to push into her, and so now we need a techno crane that can be high enough to be able to get this shot. So this is the third shot in the oneer, and so to do that, we need to remove a wall to get the 45-foot base in the set. And also we needed to, the height of we actually couldn't be quite at 45 feet, actually, now that I think about it, because we couldn't get our camera high enough then for it to match the distance. So
Mm.
the set had to shrink slightly so that our camera could be high enough. And we found space between the rafters, between the reds, so that we could get our crane there. And so then we start pushing in. So this is the third shot. So we're pushing down, and then we take it all the way up the stairs. So this is
Shot
all
looks cool.
still the same shot. So this is still all the third shot. And then we're about to hit the only stitch we actually have that's not in a mirror, which is right here,
Yeah.
where we had to transition to Steadicam. So now and that's the only reason we needed to do it, was so that we
Did
can now
you
be in a
do you
Steadicam to pull
do you,
down the hole.
do you frame that a little wider to help with that stitch?
We did not. We did not. We were in
You,
very tight space. We
yeah,
only right. We have a balcony. We have the stairs right behind us. So
right.
so
I mean, it's seamless. It's
um,
fantastic.
but at the time, the Pablo, our VFX supervisor, is like, it would be better if she fully wipes the frame. And John's like, I don't want her to fully wipe the frame. Then it doesn't. Then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Um, so then those two sconces also I needed built into the wall there, because she was going to stop in this door jamb, and so those two on the were those were added to the set too. Actually, the ones up the stairs were also added to the set.
These two are my favorite from the sequence.
Oh
From
yeah,
from the theater to watching for today, I was like, those are beautiful, and they're in. Thank God they're there.
I know. Thank God they're there. Oh my gosh. And then, we've got lots of other practicals lighting this space, and we use the same pink that we used in the first movie in Popular. And then we pull back, and so we shot both directions in this mirror. And so this is shot 5, and we're back on the crane to bring her down the stairs.
So I'm sorry. So the beginning of this,
So we're
that's not
all
another stitch, the transition to it being a mirror.
no, so we're pulling through. This is all where we stitch is when just her right there. So
Oh, the
so
rack focus. Yeah, that's great.
so there's that's where the fourth shot. As soon as you see her shoulder is where the fourth shot happens.
Gotcha.
or is that five now? Now I'm lost. Four or five.
One
Anyway,
of
one of,
fewer than you expect.
and then, and then, and then this was the hardest one to figure out because John's like, we actually need to, all of these are pushing through mirrors. And the last one he wanted to come out of a mirror. And
Mm.
so this is the last one where we come out of the mirror. And that's, and then now we're back to Steadicam. And then the only other piece we did is where she's looking at herself. So the last reflection, as we come around right here of the
Oh,
little
right.
girl. And like I just said earlier, the little girl was an addition, that was additional photography. So we actually originally just shot Glinda looking at herself.
Mm.
And then when we added the little girl scene, we were able to add the young Glinda back into this.
That's really
Um,
great.
and then this reflection is just it's just a flip of the right side of the frame. So that's not an additional shot.
I love how off axis you are when you come down the stairs before that final mirror because it's right in fitting with that theme you were talking about from movie one and movie two. But it also helps with this kick angle you're selling of that final transition.
There's a picture of, I think it was Jacqueline Kennedy, I'm almost positive, sitting on stairs, and that's where that image came from.
There's this one thing that I saw in the cutting back and forth between Elphaba finding the animals downstairs underneath the wedding and the wedding.
Oh yeah.
And what was interesting to me was that there is darkness on the fringes of the wedding, and it must have been very tempting to not have that there, but it really helps these two scenes work together. What's the process of getting to that?
So the wedding, I mean, the Hall of Grandiosity, which is where the wedding happens, was always this challenge for me because we're in a very, very long hallway with these windows that are, I can't remember. I think they're 15 feet in diameter, 12 feet in diameter. So just massive windows, and there are three on each side. And um, through prep, we kept trying to figure out, do we just originally construction had just the art director had just put the set in the middle of the stage, and the ends of the stage are right beyond the doors,
Oh,
and
wow.
and but then it gave me no place to light from. So then we offset it and decided we'd only do hard light through what we call the west side. So on this frame, it's the left side.
Mhm.
And but then we also on this set they brought in trees. They brought everything was filled up, and so originally we started playing with a much brighter lighting situation, and then I realized I really just wanted it to be like this vignette, to feel like a natural vignette on Glinda as she was walking through this space, and that she doesn't know what's about to happen to her. And I knew we were intercutting through this very dark moment downstairs. And these two sets, like if you looked at a cross section of Emerald City, the prison is right below the where the wedding space takes place.
Right.
And so these two women are walking this parallel path where neither one of them knows what they're about to both wake up to many things. And so just creating, and she is so much of this, Glinda's centered, and so is Elphaba. And for Elphaba, all we used, I can't remember what's outside, but just one huge tungsten light that we pushed through, um, like a T12 or something that we pushed through and bounced
Just to
off
give
the
that great
top.
shadow. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, and then we had some skirt lights above, but we dimmed those way down or even off for most of it. And then we had just some practicals that we had built into these cages. But so Alphaba is such a simple lighting setup, and Glinda, on the other hand, was incredibly complicated, where we've got light coming through the windows, and we use a softer version of our pink on the backlight, and then we've got this golden glow for the yellow butterfly push as well. So
Oh, that's cool. So You've already determined the color the butterflies are going to be, and
And yellow is this color of yellow for me was the color of Glinda's intuition. And she's the one who picks the color of the yellow brick road in the first movie. And we use this yellow light that comes up and hits her face from the yellow brick road. And so, and then in the little girl scene, we pushed yellow light through yellow flowers. But of course, we did that after the fact. And then here is the yellow from, we had the yellow from the butterflies is bouncing back up at her. And then in the very end of the movie, the grimoire opens up for Glinda when she finds what it truly means to be good and finds her power. And that is a different color than the grimoire light that we used on Alphaba, and it's the yellow of the same yellow as the yellow brick road.
that's so it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see all the planning and hard work and payoff. I hope you, after seeing the movie so many times and doing so much press for it, I hope you get more moments like the little kid coming up to you.
But even like the other night, my husband really wanted to see it at the Chinese theater. So Friday night we got tickets and we went. And I was like, oh, I've seen this movie so many times, but it was, but then I sat there and I watched it and I love it. And it was, and I'm like, oh, I can just like sit here and be an audience member. We got a big popcorn, we got soda, and we just like, we're a family. My daughter was with us. We just like, it was wonderful. And getting to see it in the Chinese theater was really a great experience too. It's a beautiful theater.
Yeah, that's a magical place to see a magical movie. To me, the big takeaway is the movie nights. To like that connection, staying connected to the story through your director, and then connecting to your crew through any means possible outside of this is the checklist of things we need to get done tomorrow.
And so easy just to get so absorbed in the logistics on
So fast
anything, right? I mean, even
at any
like
scale.
at any scale, but even in your own like personal life with your husband or wife or whatever, like suddenly like you have children and then it's all logistics. I mean, it can be the same thing on a movie, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay, no, where do you actually connect with the other people who are making this movie?
Yeah, and then you get to you elevate it beyond yourselves. It's so
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Well, thank you for
awesome.
sharing that.
Thank you.